Step one.
local. All right. It's recording, so I didn't forget to do that.
Okay.
And then I'm going to hit present. And then we learn this really cool thing. Wait. Uh-oh. Didn't work. Time out. See, now I recorded me messing up. This is a problem. We're going to go to here.
We'll have it on video.
Yeah. See?
There we
All right.
go.
Now you see the screen, right?
Yep.
And we're going to present it. How's that?
Perfect.
Good.
And we're going to give. Oh, did it work? Ashley, did you get a thing?
I didn't. You were viewing.
Oh, John's controlling it. You got it. Okay.
Okay, John's got it.
John's got it.
Wait, we didn't work on, how do I transfer it over to her?
No, you can do it. All you.
Can't. It's only one or the other.
Okay.
All you. So, sorry, John,
All right.
you're in charge of.
You're good. We're
live.
recording.
Power.
You have the power.
Nah.
All right. So yeah, we'll start going. We'll get going now.
Go ahead.
Right now, right?
Yeah. Good.
All right, cool. So last time, guys, we just talked about a lot of basics for strength training. And today we were going to be getting into a little bit more of the equipment, which for us is shoes. That's a nice thing about running is that the entry point or the barrier into entry is probably the cheapest out of any sport out there known to man. And you just really need a pair of shoes, the right pair of shoes. And if you stick around with us long enough, you'll realize that that actually means like 8 pair of shoes. We'll move past that. But we're going to talk about some running equipment, a lot of techniques, and some of the drills that are really unique to running, but also really, really important. And we're going to talk about something a lot today called motor control or neuromuscular control. And, whether Ashley, Justin, and I say that, it really just means that your body is a machine and you have bones which need to move. You have muscles which control those bones, and then move the bones. And then you have the computer chip, the brain, that tells, the muscles how and when to move the bones. I think I alluded to that last time. And a lot of these motor patterns or motor control is all about, I think this is, Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, or let me know if you agree, but you've always heard people talk about muscle memory, right? Muscle memory, and muscles remember, whether it's a basketball player shooting free throws or anything of the sort. Your muscles don't remember. Your brain just kind of gets really efficient at certain motions that you do over and over again, like a habit, whether it's, a woman, I don't know this, but like, brushing her hair back over her ear, or for me, like I'm always scratching my eyes, things like that. So once you do these drills, it's really good because it replicates the pattern of running and getting the legs moving in a certain rhythm. And that is probably one of the most important things when it comes to being an efficient runner. So that's what the gist of today's workout is really, or today's lesson is really going to be, getting to some techniques and drills and equipment. And there's my monster in the background.
I'm just waiting for Kona to go. But I think the big thing, like John's talking about, this whole motor control aspect, is that when we go ahead and we start to do a new task, the one thing we have to remember is that it takes time to be better at it. And it may never be perfected. I can tell you that even people who have been seasoned runners for a really long time work really hard on these drills to continue to improve and to continue to perform better. And I think leading into kind of our upcoming lectures as well, we'll continue to talk about this motor control and kind of neuromuscular control type thing to help you just be a better runner and a better performer overall. So I think this is going to be your starting point to learn about it, and we're just going to continue down this path.
Yep. So. All right. Anybody have any questions yet? No? Okay, good. Right. So let me just make sure I have proper control over this. All right. So
I think you do.
Looks good. I just need to move this thing out of the way. So yeah, the advice that I have for beginners is the same philosophy that I have for all levels and experience and ability. Consistency, a sane approach, moderation, making your running an enjoyable experience, right? So that was more paraphrasing than anything else, but it really is true. I was just talking to actually somebody today. He's hopping on. He wants to do his first Ironman and half Ironman this year. And I kind of told him, I was like, listen, the first thing that we have to talk about is like, why are you doing this? If you're brand new with this, and he's coming from a bodybuilding background in Gold's Gym, which you would expect, And he's like, I really want to do this. Those Ironmen look awesome and running looks awesome. And I'm like, figure out why you want to do it first. Make sure that you always continue to enjoy it and love it. He's telling me like, I'm a data junkie and I'm disciplined and I measure and I track body fat. And I'm like, hang on, time out. Like, first and foremost, don't get caught up in all that all the time. Like, make sure you can learn how to enjoy it still. So, I think it's really, really important advice. And, the emotional part of it is also important.
Yeah.
Justin, I don't know oh, there we go. Sorry, it fades out. I got it. All right. So equipment for running, shoes. Ashley, I'll let you kind of take this. You put a lot of these slides together here.
All right. So basically what we're talking about here is finding the right equipment for you. And what a lot of people who are either new to the sport or just getting running, the one thing that they don't realize is the importance of having the right stuff for you. And utilizing the appropriate shoe wear, or just finding something that is comfortable. Some people take their shoes that they wear every single day and it may work for them, but it may not be the best choice for the long run. Especially because one of the biggest things I think that we stress, and I just wrote a blog on it recently, was we should never be running in the same pair of shoes over and over and over again. We should be kind of switching it in and out as time goes.
Yep.
And John, obviously, feel free to chime in. So this is just a little bit of a picture about the anatomy of a shoe, okay? You can see all the different parts. We will talk a lot about kind of this. We have the shank, okay, this type of height here. We have the midsole, outsole, forefoot. We talk a lot about heel toe drop, which will come up in a few slides from now. And we'll talk about some lacing patterns, but this is just kind of the anatomy of a shoe. And a lot of people don't realize how much actually is in the structure, especially in the sole. The sole is made up of different types of, materials. And the one thing that we look at, and I think we talk about a lot, is kind of the foam that sits in the sole and how the foam needs rest. Just like, other things in our life need rest as time goes. We don't want to overuse it. And that's why we really stress that. Hey, you know what? Get in more than one pair of shoe when you run. Make sure you are definitely trying out different things and never really use the same thing over and over again. It makes your body more resilient, just like being able to move in so many different ways.
And, one thing I will say is that it is a lot of information. The technology in shoes has come so far, over the past 5 years. Hell, let's just look at these new Nike Next Percents and all these carbon plates. Not that carbon plates are new. I've spoken on that before, how they've been around for decades, but the foam technology and the way they're using the carbon plates, that stuff is crazy over the past, 4 or 5 years. Then let's think about running shoes over the past 10 years, 15 years. And so I ran my first half marathon in 2011. And I remember I went to Roadrunner Sports in Westchester. And at the time, I was like, oh, wow, yeah, this is cool. They put me on a treadmill. And in reality, it seemed like they just kind of pushed me towards something. And they were very generic responses. And so, Kim, this is something that I will say for you guys there. We don't expect the average person to be able to know everything that's on the screen right now. We know this because we've made it a hobby of ours as well. Not just part of our profession, which is awesome, but we literally read up on this stuff for countless hours throughout the week. Kim probably even more so than us because, she has to stock the store and know everything about every shoe. And so, don't get overwhelmed by this kind of stuff. This is where you don't have to memorize this. I think it's fun if you want to be a runner and you want to know a little bit more about your own running, getting the terminology down right and understanding what we're talking about, or what Kim and her team or any other store like that might be talking about is really important, because you're going to feel like, okay, yeah, I remember that. Or I know what they're talking about, rather than just being like, huh? Almost like that John Travolta gif where you're just like, your head is spinning. So, I will say,
John, just to interrupt. So I know that there will be some people who watch this back who may not know who Kim is. Kim owns Fleet Feet in Poughkeepsie. It is a purposeful running shoe store. You can go in there, they fit your feet, and it's an awesome resource for runners. So shameless plug, Kim, there you go. That's for you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I always say, like, in the same way that if you wanted to, color your hair, you wouldn't probably like go do a ton of research about dyes and how to do it and process and all these things. You would probably just go to a hairdresser, right?
Yeah.
So same thing sort of applies for footwear. Like, we're there, we kind of know the ins and outs of the shoes, and we can help to match you up to a shoe that's likely to work well for you. So.
Yeah, it's just it makes a world of difference, rather than just like, oh, I like those colors, I'm gonna put those on, and it's like, oh, it's a shot in the dark. So, all right,
Right, next
we could talk about shoes all day long.
We can. And I think we also, know a lot about shoes, because if you look at the closets of the three of us here,
Yeah.
pretty sure. I mean, I have all of mine next to me just so I can kind of bring them up, and not all of them. Some of them are still stuck in the office. But yeah, so shoe sizing and selection. And I think this is a really important topic for a lot of people. And one of the biggest things that people will make a mistake with is, we should really get shoes fit at a certain time of day, mainly because your feet swell throughout the day. We are walking around, we are doing things, we are moving. And as most people know, like, you may feel your fingers swell throughout the day, depending on what you're doing or what you've eaten. So same thing goes for your feet. So getting your shoes fit kind of in the afternoon, one of the best things you can possibly do. The other thing, most runners have a preferred sock they like to run in or use. So make sure if you have socks that you like to use, bring those with you. Or, try out a new pair that you think you maybe have an affinity to, and go ahead and get the shoe fit with that. So some of the most important parts about kind of finding shoes, I have my bright pink shoes. John has the same matching shoes somewhere. But when you go and you look for a shoe, you definitely want to look on the inside of the shoe and feel around on the inside of the shoe. Make sure there's nothing there, okay, when you go to put this shoe on that you're going to feel maybe abrasive to your foot. How many people have kind of come in, or we've seen, who will continue to run in a pair of shoes that says, hey, you know what, this is cutting the insole of my foot. We're not looking for that. We want to avoid that at all costs. So other things to look for, you should always have appropriate room in the toe box of a shoe. Your foot should not feel as if it's suffocating. You should be able to move your toes kind of side to side. Your whole foot should move. And you shouldn't necessarily feel like your foot's restricted. The thing is when you have room in the toe, okay, for the kind of big toe, if your second toe is longer than kind of your big toe, you need to fit your shoes to the second toe and not that big toe. Okay, so not everybody has feet, and I put this picture here, not everybody has feet that look like this. So that's something to remember when kind of trying on shoes. One of the ways to know if a shoe may fit you, say you're not going to Fleet Feet, and you're not getting fit by a professional, but take the insole of that shoe out before you even put your foot in it and put your foot on it. That may give you a little bit more insight as to how to fit the shoe properly to your foot, or if the shoe may fit you, okay, may fit you a little bit better. I already said fit the shoes to the longest toe. And then the biggest thing that I see sometimes as well is that when you try on a shoe, it's not snug to your heel, okay? Your heel should not be able to move in and out of that shoe very easily, and you should have a nice snug fit in that heel section, right?
Yep.
Any questions, any thoughts? John, anything before we move on?
No, I mean, Ashley, it was great when you threw this out there. It's honestly, guys, think of it like a car. Does it fit your needs, what you're going to be doing with it? But more importantly, is it comfortable? If you're not comfortable in it at the very beginning, you're not going to be comfortable in it when you start running in it. And Kim, I think you tell people that all the time.
And we have a little bit more about that too. So if we switch to the next slide.
Yeah, it's not going to break in. It's not going to stretch out. It's whenever people start asking that question, we're like, move on.
So the first bullet point on this slide is that the most important thing about picking a shoe is comfort. All right. That is one of the most important things when it comes to running shoes, because like Kim said, it's not going to break in. If it's not comfortable to begin with, do not buy that shoe. And then some of the other things, like we look at shoes definitely have something to do with kind of the energy that we give back to running. So a pair of shoes that is more than 440 grams or 15 ounces can negatively affect running economy. So affect how our body kind of propels forward, the energy kind of consumption that we use with wearing a heavy pair of shoes. And this pertains a little bit more to kind of people who are racing in these shoes. If you go out and train a little bit heavier pair of shoes, it may not be the end of the world. Some other thoughts, if you are comfortable in a flatter shoe, the lightest, flattest, most comfortable shoe, can be better. And then make sure to take your shoes for a test run. Okay, that is one of the most important things. And the lightest, flattest thing, that doesn't always pertain to every single person, but if you can get into a shoe that's a little bit flatter, you may just feel a little bit more comfortable over time. And we'll go over a little bit in regards to what we mean by a flatter shoe. And we'll also kind of go over, hey, you know what, like this, maybe you may feel something here. This is what we want you to wear, or ideas for you to kind of take away from this in regards to heel drop, which is what we'll talk about coming up. And John just
right there. Sorry, I was just grabbing a pair of shoes. So I will say, like going back to the comfort part of it, I don't want to go off on a tangent too much here, but like these became like all the rage a few years ago, the Nike Free line. And a lot of other companies are following suit, where literally this thing, like we talked about last time, you can fold this thing up, the heel cup, there's nothing to it, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of looking for a shoe that's right for you, Kim and I were talking a couple days ago. My sister's down in North Carolina. She needed a new pair of running shoes. And so we snagged her a pair of Brooks. And it was, Kim, was the Ghost, right?
Yeah, it was the Ghost.
So the Ghost happens to be one of those shoes that's just like Kim put it, the vanilla ice cream of shoes. It's like middle of the road. Most people that put their foot in it are going to be comfortable. Nike Pegasus also happens to be one of those shoes as well, where, yeah, Ashley's got them, I've got them. I've got them in many colors. But the Pegasus is also the same thing, just a middle of the road, good shoe that's going to work for a lot of people, especially for new runners. Almost all my new runners that come in, I'll funnel them towards one of those shoes to try.
Yeah.
But again, you can see the heel cup is stiff. It doesn't have a lot of rotational movement. So it's a very good shoe. And so those are the kind of things that we look for a person getting comfortable before we get into like a lot of the heel toe drop stuff like that, which I'll let Ashley get into now.
Yep. And I think one of the other things that we also talk about shoes is I did have kind of on there manufacturing defects. So you know what, make sure, just observe your shoes when you get them. The other thing to kind of look for is if you start running in a new pair of shoes and you go ahead and you start feeling pain in a certain area, if you go ahead and kind of, if you do what we call like a break test on a shoe, if we fold it, okay, you can see where this one folds, and this one actually folds a little bit further back.
Ashley, is that the right shoe?
Yup.
Okay.
And then this one actually, let's see. Yeah, this one, that's the right shoe. This is the left shoe.
Yeah.
So, and let's see, let's do this again. That one's actually a little better. But we know that the Nike Pegasus 36s have a little bit of most of them have a little bit of a manufacturing defect from what we've seen.
Always the left shoe, what we
From
found. So
yep.
Out
From
in Seattle, somebody had it. It was the left shoe.
Yep.
Ashley's pair, my pair.
Mine folds pretty far back in the left shoe.
So it's kind of funny. It's one of those things that if you're somebody, sorry, Ashley, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
If you're somebody that's dealing with like either bunions or metatarsalgia or some pain in the bottom of your foot, maybe something like that is going to be the difference. We've all experienced it, where three of us have kind of funneled somebody away from that shoe, and it made all the difference. And they were, maybe 3 or 4 other people prior to that, and they were trying to give them orthotics and shoot them up with cortisone and do all these things. And it was like, hey, let's just take a look at you.
Yep.
So.
And that's also why we always say try not to run in one pair of shoes, because sometimes we can pinpoint some things. If you're running in one shoe and it doesn't bother you, and you're running another shoe and it bothers you, then hey, you know what? We may have found common ground here. So now we're into the world of heel toe drop, and what you can see from here is basically, and can't point, but if you saw me pointing at my screen, you have the end of the shoe, okay? You have back there, and then you get the forefront or the forefoot type of area of the shoe, okay? And then you look at the two of those, and you basically do A minus B, just as it says, and you subtract those two. And basically what it's telling you is how much offset the heel to the toe is, okay? How much is the height difference between the two? So if we kind of go to the next slide, okay, we have just examples of varying heel toe drops. So low, mid-range, standard. And there's different reasons why we may change the heel toe drop that you're using. So for example, myself, I had a, big toe, great toe injury last year, and I could not tolerate running in, say, my Nike Pegasus, of which I absolutely loved. But I switched to running actually in the Ultra Torrens, okay, which are a 0 drop shoe. And I was able to take some pressure off of that great toe, that big toe. And I was able to get back to running just by kind of getting into a shoe that had a different drop, because it changed the way that my foot was moving on the ground. And for certain injuries, say like an Achilles tendonitis or something of that sort, we may throw somebody into a higher, okay, or that standard range of that heel toe drop, just because of the way that it ends up changing the mechanics. So heel toe drops are one of those things that it can really vary from person to person. And if you come into the clinic, you say, hey, I've been running in this forever, I'm starting to feel this, we may observe that as one of the factors to change.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I'll also say it depends on the person too, not just injuries, but so take me growing up. I grew up playing soccer. I am not very mobile. When it comes to mobility, my ankles are very, very stiff and rigid. You'll find that with a lot of explosive athletes or explosive sports, where if you have to change direction a lot, cut and move, be explosive, decelerate, accelerate, those people are going to develop a lot more rigidity in their lower extremity joints than somebody who doesn't do that. And that's just the nature of the beast. That's the demands of their sport. So for me, I mean, I'm not changing much of my bony structure right now. I'm just very tight in general. I have just enough mobility to get by for running now as I've transitioned to being a runner. And I do really well. So the Saucony Kinvara is probably my favorite shoe of all time. And I've always thought Kim wants to like walk away from me whenever I come to the store. I'm like, Kim, what do you have that's like the Kinvara? Every single time I go in, just because I always love it. And so because it's such a low heel toe drop, I do well in it because I'm not an aggressive rear foot striker. I'm more lateral, definitely not forefoot, but more so than a rear foot striker, which requires a lot more stiffness at the ankle to be able to handle those demands. I just don't handle that rocker motion of, my heel hitting the ground and then rolling through it, because my shins don't move that much over my foot in general. And that's just me. So that's something else we'll also look at for people is we'll try and keep them in similar ranges. And while we recommend people have different shoes that have different heel toe drops, we'll never recommend that early on you jump a category.
No.
For me, I'm in 0 to 4, and then I do really well with something in the 5 to 9 or 5 to 10 range. I don't do well with 10 plus or 12 plus. It's just really tough for me. So, and again, that's just me personally.
And I mean, if you do if you want to transition, like we always talk to seasoned runners, if you have a specific heel toe drop that you love to run in, and then all of a sudden this latest, greatest research comes out saying, hey, you know what, like let's run in that low heel toe drop, you are at a predisposition for injury if you just go to say the 10 to 12 that you've been running in for ages if you decide to jump to the 0 to 4. It's something that you have to do a gradual change to. And it's something to really pay attention to, especially if you try it and your body starts to say, hey, red flag or yellow flag, you know what, like listen to your body, don't take the jump too fast. And some people can tolerate it depending on the person and the experience of the runner. You know what, if it's a newer runner, they may actually, believe it or not, be able to go from heel toe drops or different heel toe drops a lot easier than somebody who's been running for a really long time.
Yep. Any questions on those shoes before we get going?
Yeah. Right. So I think we kind of talked about this. Other things to look about when buying shoes: manufacturing defects, place of purchase, because some places have return policies. Make sure you try them on, and not all model years are made equally, so don't always go for the cheaper option.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big one. And I think I've actually had the conversation with Kim where somebody came in and they bought last year's model, and then they're just really not happy with it.
Yeah.
So
it sucks. You find a shoe you like sometimes and they switch it up on you before you know it. So
yep. So this is a big question I think we get a lot, and John, obviously feel free to chime in, but when should you retire your shoes? And this is a general rule of thumb. It is not a set in stone rule for all pairs of shoes. I have seen people who have come into the clinic with 600 or 700 miles on their shoes, and they're telling me they're starting to have pain, and that kind of makes me almost want to pull my hair out sometimes. Mm-hmm. But, and I live with somebody like that. So he's currently not around, but he's upstairs. But so the 3 to 400 mile rule, that is for, you know, your general pair of running shoes. If you are in something like a Carbon X or, you know, one of the new Nikes, then they may have a life kind of expectancy of only up to 150 miles. And that is something to remember and take kind of into thought when you're buying a pair of shoes. Okay,
Yeah.
because obviously you want your shoes to last. But the other thing is if you're rotating through more than one pair of shoes, and I can't tell you, I think I have 6 pairs of shoes behind me that are in my running repertoire here. You know, just make sure you keep track because it can be a risk factor for injury. And for some people it may not be, but it certainly can contribite.
I think also if you're getting to something like the Carbon X or the Nike Next Percents or anybody else who's going to be coming out with those are more often than not your race shoes.
Big shoe.
So you don't have to worry so much. I mean, you should definitely train in your race shoes little by little, but you know, you could probably get a little bit more life out of them. But with those price tags on those shoes, you know, unless you hit the Powerball and you want to get every single pair of your shoes with them, you know, that's awesome. But I think you can get away with that. But they're not meant to break down. But because again, the amount of material in them, they're lightweight. They're supposed to be efficient shoes and for racing. So, and I think that's something to remember. All right.
Speaking
So,
of the Next Percents.
Yep, exactly. So these are one of those nice. I think those are the Zoom flies out there. Lindsay just asked, how many miles should your race shoes have? What do you mean by that, Lindsay? Do you mean like, can you clarify a little? I'm sorry, I don't understand. I might just be slow.
When should race shoes
Sorry,
be
I just wanted to unmute myself. Like, so say I'm like have a race coming up, like a marathon.
Mhm.
How many, like how long does it take to break in the shoe before you should run in it?
Oh, gotcha. I mean, ideally, we try and recommend that everybody go out, and I will tell people, I want you to run at least one run in each of the type of runs that you may experience. So one tempo run, one sprint workout, one long run, just to make sure that your body will adapt and your foot likes that shoe for each of those styles of runs. And if you do, you're probably pretty good. Again, Kim, you know a lot of the latest technology out there. Justin, Ashley, chime in, but you really don't have to break shoes in.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I really like to do a race in a shoe that has very fresh foam, because I think we're going to talk about this on the next slide, but we're going to talk about how the foam starts to break down quickly. So I usually do 1 or 2 runs, and then I'll race in a very fresh shoe.
Yeah.
The shoe shouldn't really need any break-in. If a shoe's going to work for you, it's going to feel good right off the bat. You just want to kind of make sure that there's no issues with it before you go out and do a marathon in it.
Yeah.
I like to pull them out of the box and chance it.
See, I do not. I did that once and it was wrong. Just because it's the same shoe and the same size does not mean it's not going to cause blisters.
Right.
Yep.
That's the
Yeah.
take home. Every one of us has done something stupid. And
Yep.
in 2014, I raced Ironman Florida. And again, I was running in Kinvaras for 2 years at that point. And I had a pair of Newtons that I never loved them while I was running. And then I brought them with me just to walk around. And the night before the race, I'm getting my stuff together. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to race in the Newtons tomorrow. And I'm like, why? What? I ran probably a total of 6 miles in them up until that point. But don't ask me why I did that. I think it was because I liked the color at the time and it went better with my race kit. Go figure. Kim, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. And it was, you know, my calves felt it. But it was a stupid decision and I'll never do that again. So we can all share those stupid stories at one point or another. But in talking about, you know, continuing with the conversation about, you know, the shoes breaking down, it really does come down to the foam molecules. It's not so much like the tires on your car wearing out. Yes, we can see wear and tear from the outside on your running shoes. But more importantly, if you could take a picture of the shoes from the side on the day that you buy them, and then 400 miles in, you're going to notice that the stack height starts to get lower and lower. So what happens is those foam molecules do have air inside of them. And that's how they absorb shock from the ground, much like a spring. So those foam molecules are what absorb the shock. And that's what you want to allow to re-expand after your run. And, you know, that's why, I mean, Justin said it great once. It was a good analogy. He just has a line of his shoes. And when he's done with one run, he puts those shoes at the end. And then he just brings them all back up and he grabs the next pair of shoes. so that by the next time he goes to run in those shoes, the foam molecules have expanded enough to where they're as good as they can be for absorbing shock from the road the next time he hits the pavement. So at 50 miles, a shoe loses about 25% of its shock absorption in the foam. At 150 miles, 33%, and then 500 miles, you're getting up to almost half of that, shock absorption is gone. So, that's something to keep in mind. And this is all stuff that was done on studies. Any numbers that we throw at you guys, it's not just making it up. Out of all the research we've done, this is what we tried to find that's going to be the most applicable. So this is just what a lot of the research has found from people that, have a lot more fun equipment to test these kind of things than we do. Justin, you should probably get on top of that. So,
No more toys for a bit.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. So this is why it's really important to talk about shoes so often, and why it's good to have a couple pair of shoes in your rotation. It's not just because, we want you to have more shoes. It actually is going to help your feet in the long run, because if you're running in, 4 or 5 days a week, which we try and encourage all of our runners to do, if you're in the same shoe back to back, the shoe is going to break down, and you're by the third or fourth day running, the shoe is not going to absorb the shock as well as it did the first day. And your foot and your body is really what's going to be breaking down, because the foam molecules have already, been tapped out.
And our feet are one of the most important foundations for running.
Yeah.
So we don't want to make them upset.
Yeah. So, all right. So that was a lot on shoes. So let's go ahead and move past it into some lacing. Again, I think this is something that we could probably spend a lot of time on, which we don't want to right now, because I think if we went through all 12 of these, it would be a couple hours. But take a look at these on your own, guys. Unless Ashley, you had something you really wanted to throw in here.
Nope. This was just for information for the most part.
Yeah.
I say I use the heel slipping one most frequently for myself to get my heels as far back in the shoe.
Yep.
But this is something just food for thought if you feel as if you're having issues with your feet or your shoes, stuff like that. So that's all.
So refer back to it, and then you can go ahead and ask us.
Angela had a good question in the chat, guys.
Oh, what's that?
I did see that. So in regards to kind of rotation strategies other than keeping a line of shoes, should I wear my most supportive shoes on an easy run after a hard workout day the day before? Should the most supportive shoes be worn during the highest impact runs? I am not necessarily always for certain shoes for certain runs. I will rotate my shoes just based on rotation. I don't think that we need to necessarily wear more supportive shoes at certain times. I think that it's a great thing to kind of test your feet and make your feet work a little bit differently on different runs. And that's just my philosophy. But John, I don't know how you feel.
No, it depends on my mood. Sometimes if
Yeah.
if I'm going to do a speed workout and I want to have my light shoes on, I'm going to do that just because I want to feel my feet moving faster. And that kind of gets into a lot of the cadence and the drill work that we're talking about here.
Yep.
It's
Basically, if we were to jump to orthotics 101 real quick, and I think I can say this for most of us, we are a believer that orthotics should be kind of short term. They're not something that should be there for the long run. And if you have used them forever and you continue to use them, that's okay. But we in the clinic, if you are kind of prescribed an orthotic, we want you to learn how to almost control your body around it. And we don't feel like they should always be necessary. And for some people they may be, but not always 100%.
Agreed.
All right.
Yeah,
so
Angela, I would say rotate it. Don't fall into any one pattern.
Yeah, the more variety, the better. This was just another good graphic to throw in there to reference back to, guys, for the next time you're reading through this again, why walking is different from running. The displacement of your body and the float phase versus the stance phase. Again, good reference. Ashley, anything else?
Nope, I think that's it. We went over this last week, so I think it was just a good review for things. So this one, what do you consider proper running form? So everybody has had their own ideas, their own kind of preconceived notions. Is everything necessarily 100% correct? Who knows? But there are a few things that we can always look at. And I think when we look in the clinic, some things we look for kind of your foot strike, your stride length, your step width, things like that. And And
John, Chris is
every
messing with
single
you.
What?
Chris is messing with you. In case you
Why?
didn't see it. He just
What am
left
I-
his camera on a picture of pizza.
Oh, hang on. Let me scroll through. Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yep. Yep. It looks really good, Chris.
Okay.
So
I see how it is.
so everybody's going to be different, and think about this, these are 3 different runners from the London Marathon. These are the elite runners, the top of the class, and every single one of them looks a little bit different. They're all very quick, they all obviously train, and not every single person is the same. Now, if we know that somebody has an injury, we may try to alter things, but some people can adapt to their running form. So if we look at kind of heel strike, there's 3 different types of strike that we look for. We look at heel strike, okay, somebody who strikes with their heel. Midfoot strike is kind of right across kind of the metatarsal area of the foot, kind of in the middle of the foot. And then for a forefoot strike, people are really running on their forefoot. They're kind of running on their toes. Those people that look like they're kind of floating across the ground, depending on how they're running.
Yep. And again, like Ashley said, that's the take-home message. If you're gonna take anything away from what we're hopefully teaching you guys, there's not one proper way to run. And again, I'll reiterate it: there's not one proper way to run. I don't think we can say that enough. We will never funnel people towards one foot strike, especially not because they heard something read something online or heard something from one of their friends about running. Some of the best runners in the world, like Ashley just said, they heel strike, and they heel strike all day long, and they're just super efficient. And they've done awesome studies on watching slow motion footage of a lot of the marathoners at all the major runs or major races. Something like 60 or 80% of the field is a rear foot striker, Ashley, something like that. I forget the
something
exact
like that. And it's crazy to think about. So much research used to be put out there that rear foot strike was a no-no. Do not rear foot strike. It is going to just be a cause for problems down the road. But you look at how many runners really do heel strike and how many do well doing that. That's awesome. So this is basically going into what we were talking about, is changing foot strike beneficial? Not necessarily. And my big thing here is don't try to fix something that's not broken. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you are feeling something as you try running, then why not try to change kind of your foot strike? I know that I do it. I know that John and I have been on a run together and we're like, oh, we're starting to feel something. We're going to try to change the way we're striking the ground. But the big thing to kind of take away is evidence is weary regarding the change of foot strike to improve kind of these vertical ground reaction forces and stuff of that sort. So is it really important to change it? No. You know what? They've seen that people can be just as economical while running using different foot strike patterns without changing it. So I like this quote, and it's something that we've kind of see. Repetitively hitting the ground in the same manner is not a healthy running strategy. Okay, so trying to change up every once in a while, and not for long periods of time, but trying new things is not necessarily going to hurt you. It's only going to make you more resilient in the long run.
And hopefully by the end of this, you guys can try some different types of runs, because a lot of times when people just go out there and they run at the same pace all the time, every single week, and the only thing they change is the distance, depending on the day of the week it is, this is something that you're not going to do. You're going to repetitively hit the ground the same way every time. But if we can start to understand tempo runs a little bit better, or speed runs, or Yasso 800s, any kind of those drills, as soon as you start to vary the speed in which you run and try different drills, your foot's going to hit the ground differently each time. Different muscles are going to work. Or if you do cycle through different types of shoes with varying heel toe drops, your foot's going to hit the ground a little differently each time. So you don't have to necessarily consciously think about it, but it's going to happen if you start to vary the way you train. And that, I think, is a better take home, which is why Ashley included this quote in, because it is an awesome quote.
Yep.
All right, this is I'm going to go through this quick. In terms of force, this was a graph that used to be thrown around a lot to talk negatively about heel striking, because with a heel strike, that big red curve was the initial impact of the ground hitting your foot. And then as the rest of your foot hit the ground, you would go through the rest of the curve. So think of the higher the curve, the higher the force. And they used to say, oh, look, with the heel strike, you have this peak force, and that's just an additional amount of force on your foot, and it's not good. Therefore, don't heel strike. So when in reality, if you overlay that black peak on this slide now where you have the rear foot strike and then you have the light gray one underneath it. The light gray now represents that forefoot strike. So in reality, they used to say you should forefoot strike to eliminate that first peak. But forefoot striking doesn't eliminate the forces that are there. The forces just get attenuated or added to the rest of the force curve when you forefoot strike. So the peak gets a little bit higher, and the curve overall, the amount of time spent under force actually gets a little bit longer as well. So you're not eliminating the force by eliminating that heel strike. You're just changing where your body experiences it. So right off the bat, it wasn't a very good rationale. And so, what did I do there, Justin? I got it. So right off the bat, it wasn't a good rationale. And, that's why don't worry about the heel strike.
So this is just food for thought. A lot of the time we have people come to the clinic and they look as if they're running on a balance beam. And there's a lot of things that can kind of come from this. And some people can tolerate this well because their bodies have kind of built resilience to it over time. But if we look here, this is somebody who has, run with a really narrow stance, is starting to have some knee pain, saw me for 2 visits, and all we did was kind of change where his feet were landing. Okay, I told him run on 2 opposite sides of the line, change kind of the mechanics of the way he was working. It's just, like I said, a little bit of food for thought in regards to kind of, running form and running strategy over time. And if you do start to feel something, lateral hip, lateral knee, give it a try. Try widening those feet a little bit.
Yeah, and this is more testament to the fact that these running drills we're going to take you through, sometimes it's really easy fixes. It's just adding some different drills in that can change something that might be a piece of low-hanging fruit.
Absolutely. So,
all right, I'll go to the next one.
All set. Where'd it go?
All right. Oh, sorry. Do you want it or?
Oh, doesn't matter. Go ahead.
All right. Really quickly, cadence is foot turnover, or how many steps you're taking per minute. That's how we gauge it, is steps per minute. So a given amount of steps in a given time period. For us, it's steps per minute, and that's total left and right. So when we have a lower cadence, meaning you're taking less steps per minute, your foot is hitting the ground and staying in contact with the ground for a much longer period of time. So there are many studies out there actually, and they show that increasing your cadence or taking more steps per minute is a very effective strategy for eliminating the stress on different parts of your body. So that's how we can prevent those running injuries. So if we think about people that come in to see us with knee pain or hip pain or anything else like that, one of the first things we'll do is just, all right, let's try running a little bit quicker with your cadence. So we'll give them drills to improve it. And a lot of times the pain diminishes drastically. So a really quick, allude to this cadence rule. It's called the 5-20 rule. And it shows that a 5% increase in your given step rate results in 20% reduction in force at the level of the knee. So just by increasing your steps a little bit, 5% reduces a lot of stress on the body. And that's a very powerful tool that we use when it comes to running. So Ashley,
I was going to say, this is just a kind of a graph kind of explaining what John was just saying. So basically it's from a study. You can kind of see that as we go, on the first one, we're looking at kind of, power and generation of power. You will actually utilize less energy while running with a higher step rate. And I think that's really the big thing that we're kind of trying to get through here, is that you will become more economical with your running, technically, if you do run with a little bit of a higher cadence. And for some people, will it be right to change cadence? Not necessarily, depending on what's going on, but it's something to try to strive towards. If you know you're running with like a lower cadence, to get a little bit better there, because it can help over time, especially if you're having difficulty with performance, actually improving your performance throughout the long span or throughout a long span of time. So that's really what we wanted to go through here.
Nice.
Right.
And this was an example of one of my runners that I had. She came to me she has actually a surgery, a small procedure on her knee. And we were getting her back to running, and she was a very efficient runner. She really didn't have many injuries prior to this incident. And so I just wanted to get her back on the treadmill when we finally did. And so you can see, everybody see the 2 very different initial contacts she has with her foot, right? And so this was the same day in the same training session with me. So on the left was her adopted cadence. So that was her preferred steps per minute rate. What I did was we measured it and we found it was a little too low for my liking. So I was like, all right, let's just change it a little. So I gave her a metronome and I took her through some of the drills we're going to get to shortly. And that's how it changed. And so that was with no other verbal cueing from me other than just try and match the speed of the metronome. And that's how her step rate changed dramatically. She went from, hitting in front of her body, which is never good, whether it's heel strike or forefoot strike, to then hitting directly under her body with still a little bit of a heel strike. But again, this is the power of some of the drills that we're going to take you guys through. It's not magic. It's nothing earth shattering. It's just really simple techniques for runners to master.
It's really funny to think about, but typically if we think about runners, we think about like some people think about, oh my goodness, I need to stride. I need to take long strides. And it's actually been shown research that if you shorten that stride and you do increase that cadence, you are actually going to just be able to improve your running over time. And it's going to be a chance for less injury and also just, more energy for yourself to put out to continue to perform better. This is 180 steps per minute, really considered the ideal number. We use it often. For everybody, is it always correct? No. I think we've seen people who run lower than this and can still run pretty well, but you do want to try to get towards that number and maybe even a little bit higher.
Yep.
Right.
The shorter you are, the less steps you have to take. So Ashley can tell you about that.
Yeah, but I still do run at like a 180. So Justin asks me why I run a certain way, and I'm like, that's just how I run. So this is kind of just a little chart here. We utilize these. We found these and saw these when we went out to a class with our buddy Chris Johnson out in where were we? We were out in Washington. So just kind of food for thought, different energy sources while running and different sources of energy that we use. And you can see kind of as we move, okay, if we're just doing a general running, ankle and foot is where we're seeing a lot of the energy being come from, and the knee. As we kind of go into a sprinting, we're seeing that energy source kind of move up the chain a little bit. So just kind of a little bit of thought. When you start doing some speed work, you're utilizing totally different muscles. So that's very well why you could be a little bit more sore that next day. But also why you may need to focus on some of those drills that we taught you last time in regards to kind of, just improving your strength in certain areas, especially when we talked about that lower limb, well, basically knee and below.
Yep.
Oh, hi, Hayden.
Hey, dude, what's going on? All right.
There you go. He was on mute. Now you can say hi.
Hey.
What's up, buddy?
Good night, buddy.
Oh. Good night, bud.
Good night.
All right, so we're getting into some of these drills now, and there are, pardon me, a number of drills here. We're not going to spend too much time on a lot of them because the videos are here. We went through about 87 takes to get them all done right, I think.
Yes, we did.
Just so that you guys can have them for good reference. And we know it's going to be a lot of information, and we don't expect you to master them because a lot of them are motor control, and it takes some time, like Ashley said early on, to get the hang of them, so to speak. So we'll talk about why each of them are important. And so for each of these drills, we kind of put in why they're good, how you're supposed to be doing them or how you should approach them, and then how often to implement them. So things like marching, again, for our runners, we're always going to program in exercises that help get you in that upright posture, that upright position, because you need to be efficient there. So anything that has to do with marching and cadence is really about getting you to move your feet and your knees and your hips a little bit quicker, because in order to have a higher cadence, like we just talked about, steps per minute, you have to be able to move them more. And who here doesn't want to be a faster runner? If somebody said, hey, you could be faster for free, would you say no? Probably not many of us. And there's one rule. If you want to run faster, you have to do two things. You have to hit the ground harder, and you have to hit the ground more often. So all these drills that we're going to take you through are going to help you hit the ground more often. And then strength training helps you hit the ground harder because it allows you to push more weight or generate more force. So that's why they come together so nicely. So Ashley, I'll let you take yours and I'll take mine if you want.
That's fine.
we
So
can go
basically, yep, John's kind of talked about this marching. With marching, we look for upright posture. It's really working to improve your cadence and your patterning of running because you are working that alternating arm and leg just as we would if we're running. But what you're going to see in this video is I am doing a marching drill to 3 different tempos using the metronome, okay? So I am looking at 30 here, 90, and 150. And typically I wouldn't do it like that, but I wanted to show you guys something. So we can go ahead and just kind of go along to this. So, and we might be able to even fast forward the video, but this is me doing a march to a 30 beats per minute, okay, on a metronome. And you can see it's slow, but I'm really working on my patterning, okay?
I think the video is actually playing a little slow, right, Justin?
Yeah, so go ahead, we can. That's actually 30. That's 30 beats per minute. So we then go ahead and we go to 90, which is in a little bit.
Hey,
Yeah,
Justin,
90. So
Justin,
you can
you hear me?
see.
Is the video playing slowly?
Oh. No, the video is right, John.
What's going on right now?
I don't know.
Hey, could we get our IT guy on the line?
Back.
Justin, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Justin needs
You're
a new
supposed-
computer.
You're supposed to be able to hit spacebar to unmute yourself, but apparently if someone else is controlling your computer, it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
Ah.
No.
All right. So if we skip to 150, there's just something I want to show people at 150 a little bit more. So similar
Is it
to
more?
kind of,
Yeah.
yep.
All right, I'll get you up there.
So that's 30, then we go to 90. And if we get to that 150, you're working similarly to the way that you would with when you run with kind of this float phase that you have. So that's really all you're working on. And it's kind of, it's very comparable to when you start to run and we're working through that float phase that we talked about when we went over kind of the forms of running or kind of the ideas behind running. And you can kind of see it if we were to, yep, there's 90, here comes, and Nikki's moving slow. But you can kind of see my feet really are never really on the ground at the same time here. So it's something to practice. It can make you more economical and also just help you over time improve your cadence and kind of your positioning and motor control as we run.
Yeah, I think the videos are they streaming at normal speed, Justin?
Yeah. If
They
your
are?
internet's slow, it'll stream slow for you, but it looks fine here.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The
Oh,
30, John, the 30 beats per minute, and 30 beats per minute is gonna feel really slow when you do it. And it also looks really slow.
Okay.
I can tell you I felt ridiculous while doing it, but it's just a great area to start. So the next one we moved into is high knee. So basically think about marching just kind of at a faster pace. You will do this, you can look at the parameters that we had on the last slide, but this is just kind of to show you what it should look like. Just kind of bringing your knees up, okay? Working on where your foot lands under your body, okay? So you're not reaching too far in front of you, and that's one of the things we look for when we run. We never really want our feet to be too far in front of us.
yeah, that's a great point that Ashley makes there is really all about foot placement. If we're going to be doing techniques, don't think of this no differently than if you were a basketball player learning to do free throws. You're going to really harp on your elbow placement, your wrist placement, where you're aiming. You're not just doing this for the sake of doing it. It's doing it for a purpose. Any drill should be done for a purpose.
Yep.
So if you think about your foot placement, really try and get the feet to land underneath you. Like Ashley said,
Yep.
that's the butter right there.
And the more you practice, the better like neuromuscular control and learning you will get over time.
All right, I'll move into some skipping a little bit. And there's a great quote, if you can skip, you can run. And a lot of us haven't skipped since we were younger, but it's a very helpful tool, especially transitioning somebody from injury into running or a new runner into running. Like this, the gentleman I was talking to today, the bodybuilder who wants to become a triathlete now, I'm certainly going to be having him skip because he's not used to doing anything explosive like this. So I'm just going to help him ease into it. And it's a great way to get used to alternating lower body and upper body arm and leg motion. So regular skips first. Sorry, Justin, I don't know. Do you have control of it again?
I believe regular skips are first. I put them all in, John.
Yeah, I don't have control of it anymore, I don't think. Go to regular. Yeah, we'll go to the video. So this is just regular skipping right here. So nice and easy, nice and low. You don't have to get very high, but nice, easy, gentle skipping. And so once we get people used to this,
Yep.
we can then get into what we call A skips. So this is just getting used to hitting the ground even harder and hitting underneath you.
And I think that's a big thing to pay attention to, foot placement.
Yeah.
Where the foot lands in all of these.
Yep. All about foot placement. And if you talk to any track coach, either the high school level or the collegiate level, they're going to be programming in A skips for every single runner. If you guys have never heard of them, that's why we put them in here for you. But it looks a little bit different than a regular skip. And the most important thing is that other foot is hitting the ground at the same time as the other foot is just coming off of the ground. So it's really about hitting it into the ground. And these are great. And well, obviously we'll be putting up more videos for you guys in the Facebook group, but we just wanted you to have them here right now. So then we get into higher skipping, which gets us into a little bit more calf capacity. So Justin can move on to the next one. So this is like regular skipping, except you're getting, oh, did we have the,
Did I miss it? Did I accidentally put in the same one?
no, we should have had it. We had it in there somewhere.
All right.
Maybe it's
Well,
we'll get into
yeah, with the higher skips, like John was saying, basically it's skipping, just kind of propelling yourself up a little bit higher. Okay, really working on that calf capacity and working through that, and also just kind of motor control still, getting yourself to kind of build more strength and ability to kind of propel yourself forward. So we're moving towards strides. Really, when we look at strides, we're looking at technique and speed. We're talking about that neuromuscular activity again, kind of waking up your body. So you can improve your speed and foot turnover. You're working on getting your feet to move a little bit faster, working on your stride length, and then improving your running mechanics. So basically, if we look at this, I'm going to say to somebody, hey, I want you to work this into kind of maybe your speed work day. You'll do 30 seconds, 4 to 8 repetitions. And basically you want to run at, I think it's about your mile pace, or kind of like 80% of your mile pace there.
Yep.
And like I said, I want you to perform it on days after easy runs. So if we go ahead, and you may not be able to tell, but if we go ahead and we play the video, I'm just running through the neighborhood. There's Miss Kona. But I start off at kind of just a good pace, and then I speed up, and can't necessarily tell the speed up, but I start running at a better, kind of faster speed. And you're going to do that for 30-second intervals or so. And as I said, like just trying to improve basically your patterning of the motion, but also, neuromuscular control over time. And you're going to hear that over and over again. Motor control, motor control, motor control.
And I think everybody here intuitively, you can understand you're never going to run faster unless you practice running faster. And so we want you guys to watch these videos over and over again at your disposal. At your leisure. And that's why we gave them to your disposal. But think about yourself when you're running next time, and then watch this video of Ashley. See if you can notice the difference in her heels and her knees and how high her leg gets.
Don't mind the soccer player flailing arms.
Yeah. But there's no flopping. So
there's no flopping.
So just notice like how the body changes as you run faster. And that's why it's important to practice running faster little by little.
Yep.
All right. Running downhill, I can't tell you how many times I've had a runner come into me and say,
Pay attention, Kim.
What did you say?
He said, pay attention, Kim.
Oh, wow, got called out. It's better than him throwing an eraser at you. I can't tell you how many times I've had a runner come into me and tell me, Chris just sent us a message. I feel like ultra running training tends to be at a lower cadence. If I run faster, my cadence goes up. That's definitely, you should, go ahead.
I also say sometimes cadence and speed don't go hand in hand.
They're not mutually exclusive.
No, they're not exclusive to each other. So, yeah. And it really can depend. And obviously fatigue factors, muscular endurance, all of that stuff does matter in relation to things like that. Running faster, yes, is going to improve your cadence, but is it only the only factor that necessarily can help it improve?
Yeah, you should be able to run any speed at multiple cadences if you get really good at controlling your legs. So just think about skipping. When you skip, you have a very high cadence, but you're moving very slow. So you have to take that same concept and apply it to whatever, whatever you're doing. I mean, one could argue that, for a long run, slower running, you still want your cadence to be up because you're going to be taking more steps and longer ground contact time throughout the whole run. So it's even more important to have your cadence be on cue. So again, it's just about practicing. So Chris, it's almost like you should try some of these drills we're talking about.
Yes, running hills does make you faster, Jen. So we're talking though a little bit about downhill.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a different thought process. So John, go ahead.
You have to go uphill to go downhill.
You do.
Exactly. And what goes up
unless
comes
you
down.
live in my neighborhood and only use half of it.
So running downhill, again, a lot of runners have come in over the years saying, oh, my knee hurts. And invariably it's like, did you do anything different recently? Did you do any hilly races or hilly runs? And like, yeah, I did a lot of downhill running, and it thrashes the knee because you have to control yourself against gravity going downhill as well. So it's really important to build capacity in the tendon just below your kneecap because there's a little bit of a braking control component there. So we like to have people either run downhill, just like running uphill, run downhill for 30 to 60 seconds, a few times, at least once a week, and at most once every week. So that's kind of an ideal time frame to do because it does thrash your body. So if we go to the next slide, we'll see Ashley doing some, I think this is the hill one, the hill incline.
Is it? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead, shoot the next
Justin
one.
gave up.
Yeah, I did this.
Yeah. Move control again, John. I gave it back to
I
you.
can? Okay. So yeah, Ashley, again, anywhere from 5 to 20 degrees of an incline. So take a look at this big mountain.
It's not even that big of a hill though. So think about that though. You see this kind of hill just in the middle and you're like, oh, it's not, I mean, it's pretty steep, but a lot of the areas that we have around here are steeper than this. And that's what you need to think about, is that we're not asking you to go run down a big steep hill. We're asking you to take a gradual slope and run down that. Because if you go ahead and you do try to run down something that's a little bit of a higher angle there, you are going to come down and you may say, hey, you know what? Like, I'm really feeling this in the front of my knee. I felt that impact. Your body needs to build capacity to be able to do these over time.
Yeah. And there are some techniques that go into this aside from like just the drills that we're showing you here, but things like it's always good to have a higher cadence. You're going to have a little bit more of a ground contact time going downhill. I'm sorry. No, that's a little bit of a misspeak there. What's Justin laughing at?
Chris asked, what are the chances? Am I on mute? No. Chris asked, what are the chances of falling if he runs down a hill? Asking for a friend.
I think they have some bubble wrap with Fleet Feet logos on it, right, Kim?
Whatever.
You got it. He was.
So
That's how you rub it people
challenging.
when you can't. So you can,
Well,
You got to turn those feet over.
yeah.
Turn those feet over.
Also, just like running uphill, you want to get nice and low so that there's less of your body for gravity to work on, really. So running uphill, I always tell people lean forward and bend your elbows to 90 degrees to kind of keep them close to you and just really swing those arms and out in front of you so that there's more of your mass going forward. So changing your body position really helps. Going downhill, you don't want to lean backwards too much because, I mean, that's a little conventional wisdom, but you're just going to increase the braking forces at the knees. So start with lower hill inclines so you don't have to go right to 28 degrees, but you want to get comfortable leaning forward going downhill and having your feet turn over quicker. You don't want to do it too early on too steep of a hill because you may feel like you're going to fall out of control and then you will end up falling, especially if there's gravel underneath you or if it's a trail run. So like anything else, you don't just want to start with the hardest one. But we definitely recommend for hill training, get comfortable leaning forward, turning over your feet faster, getting comfortable being uncomfortable, but still maintaining control.
Yep. And I think the next slide, if we go to the next one, this is a drill that we actually use with a lot of our athletes and a lot of our people who are going to be changing direction, especially soccer players. But we thought it would be a good one to kind of implement into the world of running a little bit to help with that braking force. So if you are running downhill, our quads need to kind of accept load And sometimes that's one reason why we're not necessarily comfortable in that front of the knee, because we don't know how to handle that as runners. So this is something that you can do. Basically, I'm here and I go through a faster run, and in 3 steps, I'm trying to stop and keep that position and keep my knee from really advancing too far forward. So you can kind of see it. There's my stop.
And it's just
Okay.
a simple run, and then you pick your last 3 steps to slow down. That's it.
Yep.
It's nothing more.
Kona's on a mission behind me, if you saw that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it looks like you're getting chased by a dog.
Well, the other thing is I don't know if you saw her behind me right now, but she was on a mission. Yeah.
All right, so yeah,
have
it's nothing too crazy there. Just 3 steps to slow yourself down. You'll feel your quads burning if you try this 5-10 times.
Absolutely.
So this is just a graphic I put in for you guys to see. It compares uphill and downhill running. Obviously, contact time is your foot in touch with the ground. Aerial time, how much time you're spent swinging through the air. Step frequency is cadence, and how much work is placed on your body, or how much work your body is doing, and the energy cost. So it's just for you to look at to compare the two. It's pretty straightforward. We don't want to bore you with it right now. But again, we're just trying to give you guys as much information as possible.
Yep.
You mind if I take bounding?
No, go ahead.
All right.
I mean, we both did it at first, but John's was better than mine.
Oh,
so.
shoot, you're right. We did both do this. You also came off of a really hard workout, so I don't blame you.
I moved too fast. That's all.
Yeah. So bounding is just what it sounds like. It's really trying to take big steps and really producing a lot of force in your lower body. And why? To make your body really resilient at producing that kind of force. So all we care about is that ground reaction force. How hard is your foot hitting the ground means how hard is the ground hitting back into your foot, and can your body handle that work? So bounding is important to increase the resilience of your body, improving power and strength, and how efficient is your body when your foot is in touch with the ground. So I'll have people do it 2 to 3 times for maybe 10 to 30 yards to start, maybe twice a week. Earlier on in the season, it's important. But if you watch, the goal is to either get height, so really maximize your hang time, or maximize the distance you're covering in a short amount of time. I don't know why that just happened. Gotta go
If
back.
you don't click it on like the perfect spot, it advances it.
Oh, great.
Pain.
So this is a little bit of bounding,
Maybe.
and you can see why, it is loading, why we care so much about calf strength. Because if you don't have enough calf strength here for these kind of things, your body will break down on you. So doing all these drills, it's equally as important to preface it with the strength training we talked about the first lesson. So it's kind of like, hey, what a coincidence. We talked about strength first, and then we talked about all the drills that you can do. Because if you don't have the right amount of strength, or if you don't pass those tests, there's a high risk and rate of injury associated with trying the drills. So you want to make sure that you can handle those things first. And
There we go.
there we go. So getting into the bounding, this is in slow motion, I think, but if we focus on really trying to cover a lot of speed, and you can see how you just kind of, you want to bounce and get into the drill. It's a lot different than skipping. It's covering a lot of ground and less steps. And this is a little quicker at normal speed. Is it playing slow for you guys?
Yeah.
It's in slow motion.
Not the second one.
No.
Okay. So again, really just trying to focus on hitting the ground nice and hard and exploding off the ground. But here I was focusing on hang time, which is what you really want to think about with bounding.
And the other thing to kind of look at is think about the arm swing. So reciprocal arm and leg motion. So it's really just helping you carry over this idea of, you know what, like as we run, this is the way that we run as well. Maybe not bounding as high, but we're getting that kind of that motor control factor, kind of those nerves saying, hey, you know what, like I'm going to be able to just perform my running form more efficiently after I do these. And that's why we're throwing them out there, is for you to just become a better runner and move more efficiently with practice. Right. So we're going to,
No, go ahead.
Okay. So cadence running drills. We've been talking a lot about cadence and how important it is, and how if you improve your cadence, you can decrease your stride length and improve kind of your running economy. So these are really important. And John did do some of this, so he can chime in whatever he wants. But we're looking at running efficiency and then also dissipating those ground reaction forces of which we've talked about so much, okay? So I think before we even go to, talking about the cadence running drills, finding your cadence is extremely important first, and knowing what you run at. So if we look at kind of the next slide, I've thrown up different ways here that you can kind of go ahead and find your cadence, okay? So if you use Garmin or have a different type of watch that tracks your metrics, Suunto, stuff like that, you can go ahead. This is actually a graph from my run that I did, I think 2 weeks ago or so, but I can see what my cadence is there. And typically it's between that 176 and 184. There is a free, I believe it's actually free now, app called Run Cadence, where you have your phone and you can use your phone to help you find your cadence. The other things that I like to do, the Climb, okay, or Spotify, they offer awesome channels for you to use to run to a certain cadence or keep to the beat. And then, or you can just go ahead and use a regular old metronome and try to match the metronome to your step rate. Those are ways to measure your cadence. But if we go back, basically what we're saying about cadence drills, let's go ahead and do basically 2-minute repeats during each run. For some people, I'll have them start with kind of 30-second repeats several times throughout the run. But it's an awesome thing to start doing just to get more adjusted to having a little bit of a higher cadence.
Yeah, I think a lot of running does come down to cadence. Basically, how efficient can you be? And it starts from the ground up because your feet are in touch with the ground. So again, intuitively, if it takes X amount of force to get your body from point A to point B, let's take that amount of force and spread it over more steps, just so that it's easier on your body and your body doesn't break down as quickly. But again, there's also a point of diminishing returns. So that's why Ashley, put in, this 5%, going 5 to 10% is the ideal amount that we will have people change. Early on, we're going to start on that 5% range because anything faster than that almost becomes too difficult. Because it is a pattern. That's what I talked about the very first slide today is it's your habit. Imagine trying to do a different habit or break a different habit. It's really, really tough. So if you think about what you run at right now and how your feet move, we're going to call that your preferred cadence. Anything above 10% over that is where we really tend to get diminishing returns. So your body has presumably already defaulted to your preferred, and then we want to get you maybe 5 to 10%. I think ideally we find 5 to 8% above that. And it's all really simple. We test, just say for math purposes, it's, you run at 100 steps per minute. We're going to try and take you up to 105 to 108 steps per minute. So it's really just a simple math there. And we tend to find people that come in injured are below 160. I think that's the general area that we find people who come in with a lot of glaring injuries. A lot of runners that come in that have been doing it for a few years tend to be around the 160s. And I know, somebody asked a question earlier, I forget who it was. I'm at 164. Is that okay? It could very well be okay for you. We won't know until we get you running, until we try and mess around with some things. But again, don't think that more is always better. Once we get you to an efficient area, we're going to let you live there for a while. And sometimes things clean themselves up. If you get stronger or you do more drills, your body just naturally gets more and more efficient. So don't think that you have to get to 180 definitively, or you have to get even above 180. It's not always true, but generally 5 to 10% above your preferred is where we like to train people.
Important. There's one thing I always say to people: think about standing and think about going from, say, taking a small hop in front of you rather than taking this really long hop. And what will happen as you improve your cadence or get your cadence up, and I'm coming back, when you get your cadence up, you're not going to be taking as many of those long hops. Your feet are going to turn over faster and you're not utilizing as much energy, similar to kind of when you have to try to do that single leg longer distance hop. I think it just puts it in a little bit of perspective for people, because they can actually see, hey, you know what, it's a lot harder for me to jump farther than it is to take this kind of small little step hop over time. So,
yep.
All right.
My takeaway from this slide is that Ashley needs to charge her phone.
Yes, last night it was quite it's actually like that right now too.
It's better than seeing a screenshot of somebody's phone and they have like 900 emails.
That's true. Cam.
That's me too
Yikes.
on that page. Oh, you do. Justin's showing me his phone next to me, and it's 3,884.
Mine keeps going to 8,888, which is kind of weird. And then I get a couple and I delete a couple and then it just keeps going back to that 8888. It's very weird.
Oh man, better than
Right.
666.
Yeah.
So I did not end with the running beer pong team here today. So this is just questions. So if you have questions about anything that we went over, go ahead, shoot them in a message. Go ahead, unmute yourself and raise your hand and ask away.
I always find, this may or may not be fact-based, but I always find that individuals who are taller tend to have a lower cadence.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
If
when
you're
Jen was
taller-
asking that question, she's kind of tall like me, and mine tends to be like in the 160s.
Okay.
So, you know, I wouldn't be too upset about that. Most individuals who are significantly shorter have a much easier time doing the 180.
Absolutely. So not even just taller, but if you just have longer legs.
Longer legs, right? Exactly.
Absolutely. That's a great point, which is why, you know, we don't like people to compare, you know, cadence to their friends when they're running, because it's really what's, you know, appropriate for you.
If anybody sees my cadence, I mean, everybody knows I'm about 5'0". So don't compare yours to me if you are not necessarily as short as I am.
Yeah.
All right. We gotta take a screenshot picture before everybody leaves. So you can do the Brady Bunch thing. Look to the square above you or below you.
I don't know
Gotta
where
figure-
I am.
It's weird.
Oh, you gotta go to
Different.
gallery view.
Go to
Oh,
gallery
boy.
view.
What is that?
Hold on.
So,
So I have to look down?
Or you could
I
look
can't
left
do
or
that.
right.
Or
Yeah,
should
or
we
you can
just
look
do
left
a
or
weird
right. You'll
face?
get somebody. All right.
so while we're doing this, can I ask a question?
Of
Sure.
course.
Of course.
So back on the shoe fit thing, I've
Done.
mentioned this before. My feet are definitely very different in size. I definitely noticed
Yep.
this when I was trying on shoes. My left foot is significantly bigger than my right foot, and it almost seems like I could wear like a half size bigger shoe on my left foot than my right foot. How do you compensate for that? How do you get the right fit?
Buy 2 pairs of shoes.
I mean, actually, the easier thing to do is just, you know, I mean, we've seen YouTube before. We could take care of that in the clinic with a scalpel.
Well, the other
Um,
issue I have is my feet are wide too, so it's sometimes hard to find ones that fit because of that. So
You need to
And
find
there's very
someone
few
who has the
people that
opposite.
actually need 2 different size shoes. So everybody has about a half size differential for the most part. I would say that's like the average. And for most individuals, you just kind of make it work. You know, we do see some people who come in who have like 1.2, 1.3 differential. So that's where it starts to become more of a serious situation. But for you, I think you're good. I mean, I would love to sell you 2 pairs of shoes, but I think
Yeah.
you're fine.
well, Chris
I
and I joked that we could buy 2 pairs and you know swap because it almost
Well, so yeah,
works.
you could find a friend with like the opposite situation.
I'm
I
sure
didn't
there's
like
a
the
Facebook group
tempos.
out there somewhere.
Angela, I just saw your thing there. I love to incorporate like speed skaters to workouts. And basically when you look at a speed skater, it's almost like a lateral bounding exercise a little bit.
Yeah.
It works you out of the plane that runners typically work in, which I think is a great thing to train in, just because we know the demands of running over and over again. So if you can throw your body challenges every once in a while, it's going to be just a great tool for you to kind of progress your running and just stay stronger as you go.
Yeah. Ashley, that's a great point. That lateral bounding exercise or diagonal bounding, it's the same thing that I was doing, except you're just going out to the side a little bit. So yeah, it's great so I would almost say lateral skaters are the introductory movement to that exercise. The lateral bounding might be kind of like the baseline exercise, and the skaters would be like a lead in into it. So like Ashley said, it takes us out of the plane that we normally run. I'll never forget this. I had a runner come into me a few years ago. They were running at a race. No, I'm sorry. It was at on the rail trail, and they were finishing like one of their speed workouts, and it was towards the very end, and a squirrel ran out. And they tried to step to the side, and they ended up spraining their ankle. And so I always use that as my example. I'm like, yeah, runners are really good at going in the same direction at the same speed all the time. And it's always in a straight line. And we never really get out of that linear path. And so we tend to be very weak laterally. And so that's one of the reasons we challenge so many of the lateral hip muscles, lateral
Those
ankle
lateral
muscles.
toe taps come in.
Yeah. So it's really, really important. And maybe that might be good feedback in the future. We could put some of those in, Ashley. I think we, for simplicity's sake, we kind of got away from so many other exercises we could have put in here. But lateral drills are really, really important. Not to make your body efficient at running, but to make you more resilient at running.
Absolutely.
I bet my cadence was really good the day the skunk ran out in front of me.
Oh,
I
yeah.
would say yes.
Or if a dog is chasing you.
Yes.
I've had that happen.
How about a bear?
Where do you live?
I mean, they're in my backyard. So
That happened to me one time.
it did. It actually happened to Justin one time when we used to live in Pawling. He was chased.
Jeez.
Well, there was a bear. He wasn't chased, but there was a bear.
I didn't know I could run so fast with poo in my pants.
Any other questions, guys?
No.
No?
You
Is
do
it-
come up with something, have questions, more questions about form or stuff like that. I know we kind of flew through that. Please
Yeah.
feel free to kind of ask all the questions you want, especially if you come up with stuff over time.
How are you guys, how are you doing with all this so far? We know, we know it's a lot of information. Is it too much, between the first one and this one? Hopefully giving you guys a couple days in between to digest. And we're at your disposal. Seriously, ask us questions. We're doing our best to get back in a timely fashion on Facebook. But how is it so far? Is the information okay?
I think the information is great. Yeah, it is a lot very quickly, but yeah, luckily we can go back and look at it again. So I think it's really good.
Yeah. Is it
And I
helpful?
know, yeah.
Okay.
It reminds me of college track, but I don't ever do those things anymore. Like
Yeah.
skipping. I
It
kind
should
of like,
remind you of that. There you go.
yeah, I like the skipping. I forgot all about it.
Yep. And again, think of the professional athletes. They practice the basics day in and day out, even though the pro is making tens of millions. And if any one of you starts making tens of millions from running, I want one of your jerseys to hang on the wall. But I mean, they make the big bucks, and we promise you, they're working on these basics at practice
All the
throughout
time.
week. Their football players are working on their hand position for catching a ball. Basketball players, their wrist position. Field hockey players, placement of their stick, things like that. It's just, you can't ever forget the basics.
And we'll entertain our neighbors while we're doing it.
Yes. Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. All right.
All right, Chris, how was the pizza? Nice. Oh, nice.
Looks
Wow.
good. Looks really good.
He showed the pizza to fill off the plate.
Now it's covered in cat
Justin,
hair.
do you have anything?
No, I am all set. I think have a great night, everybody. Enjoy, and we'll. I think we were looking for maybe like Sunday night or Sunday afternoon, maybe for the next one. I don't know how that works with everybody. If you're busy and doing something you shouldn't be, you're not supposed to be leaving your house. So we'll guilt you into.
Yeah. And guys, if anybody here has
unless
had
you're running.
races, sorry. If anybody here has had races that were coming up and they've been postponed because of all this, again, don't be shy. Ask us. That's what a lot of our athletes have been doing. They're like, oh, I've had all my races canceled. Like,
I do.
How do I handle my training?
Yep.
So we can have
Oh,
a
yeah.
support group for that too.
Well, they haven't told us when it's, like one of them, they haven't said when it's rescheduled for. So I guess it was a marathon. So I don't know. Do I just come up with a new plan, like 15 miles every weekend? I don't know. I probably don't need that many, but.
Yeah, maintain. That's the big thing, is maintain your abilities and slowly ramp up. But the good news is we now have more of a cushion where we can improve your base building and things like that. So.
All right.
I think there's going to be a lot of virtual half marathons this spring.
Yes,
Yeah.
there will be.
The virtual race is the new thing. Racing
Or having to
in
run
person is
marathons
so
on your balcony.
2019.
I heard about that.
Right? Yeah.
Everything's going online. All right, guys.
All right.
All right, off we go.
All right. Good
Thank
night,
you.
guys.
Good
Have a great
night.
night.
Bye,